Mara added 18. South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers,
It's good!
and Flyers.
Oh, big save by Carter Hart.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig, Thursday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Live here in the Matt Black Kia Studios, hanging out with you. Sixers basketball back on tonight at 7 p.m. Their last game of their road trip, taking on the Cavs. Our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers beat writer Kevin McCormick will join us coming up in 20 minutes from now. Also, we'll get into the Eagles and the NFL draft as well. Go to 97.3ESPN.com for the latest on Jalen Hurts and the quarterbacks in the Eagles draft. I put that up this morning. Well, this afternoon, I should say, but working on it for a couple of days now. Over at 97.3ESPN.com. Get some more insight in the Hurts and the quarterbacks. Right now, the Phillies are tied 2-2 in the bottom of the eighth. Phillies trying to maybe win their first day game, opening day. Remember, there really was no opening day last year. This whole fiasco with the pandemic and everything. So, but baseball is back for what it's worth. We are a couple weeks away from the NFL draft. We do got to get into that as well here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. And we are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show live in studio as Kevin McCormick will join us on the video a little bit earlier right here on 97.3 ESPN. So with the NFL draft a couple weeks away, Mike Gill and I are talking about the different prospects a little bit earlier about who could or who couldn't be available for this team. And I got to tell you, there's something to be said for the fact that the Eagles have options in the NFL draft. And part of the reason why I wrote what I did at 97.3 ESPN.com was because we're hearing more and more people come out of the woodwork. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think this is something that needs to be kept in mind. There is something to be said for the fact that when you have a team that trades out of the top 10 in a draft that is as hyped up as this is, because it's really hyped. There's a stupid amount of hype with this draft. It's just ridiculous. So when you trade out of the top of the draft, you have to consider two things. Number one, what you're saying is that the talent at 12th overall is good enough for you to go get a guy. You're also saying that your quarterback is somebody that you believe in moving forward. Both can be simultaneously true. It is not a one or the other kind of thing. So with that being understood and with that being said, when you think about the Eagles as they head into the draft, they have a lot of options. They have a lot of opportunities to really address needs. And one of the things I want to remind you guys, it doesn't all have to be first round, second round picks. Don't forget there are later rounds to find talent. You know, you've heard the name Rashad Bateman mentioned multiple times on the Sports Bash this week. That's not a coincidence. It's not just because Mike Gill and myself are sitting here and telling you that he's a really good player, but it's because other teams think he's a really good player, and those who evaluate the draft for a living are sitting here telling you this guy's a legitimate option for the Philadelphia Eagles, where they sit right now in the second round. So if you walk out of the first 2 rounds of the draft with a cornerback and a wide receiver, whether it's round 1 or round 2, whatever the order is, whether it's Bateman in the second round or Jalen Waddle in the first round, or if it's Bateman in the second round, or if it's J.C. Horn in the first round, whatever the order is, you're still addressing needs. And I think that's the biggest thing with the Eagles. They need to address needs. Listen, I gave you I pounded the table. I told you guys yesterday, I personally am going cornerback in the first round, and I'm doing whatever it takes to get that cornerback. And listen, if that means you got to trade up maybe a couple spots to get that cornerback, I'd even consider that too. But at the end of the day, if you walk out of the draft with Asante Samuel Jr. in the second round and one of the 3 wide receivers in the first round who would be there, considering all the guys who will be reached and overdrafted this year, it's still a win-win for you. Listen, mock drafts are now projecting guys who are supposed to be second-round picks, like Mann from LSU and Tony from Florida, to go in the first round. These are not first-round picks. These are not first-round talents. These are guys who people are gawking over because they ran unofficial 40 times that may or may not be manipulated. There's no way that I believe that everyone in this draft all can run 4.3 or 4.4. That's a load of malarkey. That's garbage. There's no way all these guys are that fast. But yet, there's a couple guys who are just stupid enough to be tricked into drafting these guys high enough because this is the NFL, and every year there's a dude picked ahead of a better dude. That's just the way sports works. I told you guys before, J.J. Watt was the 11th overall pick. The dude's going to the Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers was picked in the 20s. The guy's going to the Hall of Fame. Happens all the time. Dudes are overreached. Dudes are picked where they shouldn't be. And it's just the nature of the beast. And as long as the Eagles are not that team, I think that should be what gets you happy about that situation. If the Eagles are not the team that reaches for fill in the blank player, then that's already a win right there. I can't promise you every player they get is going to be a hit, but as long as the Eagles are drafting guys in the range where they should be, I think it's a good thing. Andrew DeCecco joined Mike Gill on the Sports Bash yesterday and talked a little bit, earlier today, talked a little bit about the cornerbacks available. He first talked about Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain II. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I still believe that one of the 3 corners will be there for the Eagles at 12th overall. I'm not buying into this idea of the Broncos getting a corner yet because they just spent money on the secondary with guys like Fuller and re-signing their safeties. So I'm more inclined to think the Broncos do something like go offensive line or trade out of that spot altogether to let a team come up and get a quarterback. So this was DeCecco earlier on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash, first talking Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain. Take a listen.
When you're looking at Caleb Farley, I think he has the highest ceiling out of all 3 of them. He has the wingspan, the length, the physicality, the ball skills, the tackling. His ability to match and mirror is fantastic. He just has an innate athlete. Isn't quite necessarily as polished as a guy like Patrick Surtain, who also has great size, physicality. You would like to see him turn some of those pass breakups that he had. He had a number of them at Alabama. You'd like to see them turn into interceptions.
So with that description, you're talking about 2 completely different style of players. Yes, Farley has a lot of potential, but he's also suffered a couple back issues. And if you're in your early 20s and you set out for an entire year of football and you're dealing with any type of back issue, that's a red flag to me. But I understand he's got a lot of potential. He said Patrick Surtain is more polished than Farley is. So while Farley has a lot of potential, Surtain is more polished and probably more NFL ready. But the problem is that he's got to turn those deflections into interceptions. And that's something that Eagle fans should be used to, because how many times did you see Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown drop back and you were like, man, they could have had that interception? The old saying that we were always taught when we were kids. Well, if you can't catch the ball, you can play cornerback. At least that's what they told us when I was growing up playing football. Listen, I'm not as worried about Patrick Surtain getting interceptions as long as people don't score on him. I don't want to see my cornerbacks get burned anymore. I'm tired of Kayvon Seymour and all these guys out there getting burned because they don't even belong on a football field right now because there's been so many injuries. So for me, give me Surtain over Farley. Now, this is what DeCecco also said about J.C. Horn. This is the third cornerback of this group of three that you heard Emery Hunt talk about earlier this week about. Those three corners are in a group by themselves, and then there's everybody else. So here's the perspective of DeCecco on J.C. Horn.
J.C. Horn, who I think would be a desirable candidate at 12, we see someone with an alpha mentality, a very physical defender, sometimes a little bit too grabby. But I think there's some that think he can even play safety at the next level. I think he's going to be a boundary corner, a bully type of corner, something like a Jalen Ramsey. Needs to work on certain aspects of his game. Doesn't always have the most fluid footwork, but those are areas that you could really that are going to get ironed out with the proper coaching staff at the next level. I think his ceiling is higher than Surtain's.
So the way it works is that when you think about the three guys, Surtain probably has the highest floor. Like, he's the guy who's going to come into the league and be more ready than the other two initially. There's a lot of people who believe that Horn and Farley have a higher ceiling than Patrick Surtain does. That Patrick Surtain is a Pro Bowl level corner potential, and that J.C. Horn and Caleb Farley are all pro potential. Now, we'll have to wait and see. Again, I am suspicious of the injuries that Farley has sustained. I think that J.C. Horn is an underrated coming into this process. I think he's finally getting his just due. I was having a conversation with two different people in the last several days who both told me that they didn't understand what people like about J.C. Horn. I told them both, you need to go back and watch South Carolina games, because J.C. Horn played great for a team that was mediocre on a good day. That entire football team last year was an underwhelming disappointment. That's why their head coach got fired and they have a new one over there. That's why Shane Beamer is now the new head coach, because you can't play that just average with all the talent that they've had in the last few years. So J.C. Horn was not in an ideal situation to showcase his skills. And that's another thing about these cornerbacks. The evaluation process this year is completely a mess, because Alabama won the national championship. So Patrick Surtain II got to be showcased in many ways. Caleb Farley didn't even play last year because of the opt-out. And then you have J.C. Horn, who played on a miserable team. So think about it. You got one guy who played on a great team, one guy didn't play at all, and one guy who played on a pathetic team. And so evaluating them really comes down to really taking the time to really dig deep on the tape. You got to rewatch the game tape, the coach's tape, and the different angles to really see what J.C. Horn can do. I love the fact that he also brought the fact that Horn can maybe play safety one day. I would love for the Eagles to get a guy who could be a corner for about 8 years and then transition to safety. How cool would that be? By the way, that's what Malcolm Jenkins did. Not as long as amount of time, but Malcolm Jenkins was drafted to be a corner and became a safety. Charles Woodson started as a corner, became a safety. Rod Woodson started his career as a corner, became a safety. There's a long history of guys who have made that transition. So if you get one of those caliber guys, sign me up. So to me, I would love to see them go corner at 12. To me, it's about substance over flash. That's how I feel about it. And hopefully they do. We'll have to wait and find out. With your thoughts and comments a little bit later this hour at 609-403-0973. Also, you can comment live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Game Night will be brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. The tournament is down to just 4 teams: Gonzaga, UCLA, Houston, and Baylor. And if you've been watching from the sidelines, now is your chance to get in on the action with FanDuel Sportsbook. They are hooking you up with exclusive 40-1 odds on all 4 teams left in the tournament. That's right. New users get 40-1 odds on any team to win this round. You can win $200 on a $5 bet. All you got to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and make your first deposit to unlock these exclusive 40-1 odds when you sign up with my promo code Hennig. That's right. Sportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Use my promo code Hennig when you sign up. Get these exclusive 40-1 odds on the NCAA tournament. That's promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in NJ or PA. New users only. Must wager in designated offer market. $10 first deposit required. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And of course, you can hear the entire Final Four of the NCAA tournament this Saturday with coverage beginning at 4:30 right here on your home for Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, the NCAA tournament, the Super Bowl, and more. 97.3 ESPN FM. Speaking of the 76ers, we're going to touch on them coming up next with Kevin McCormick. Sixers versus Cavs tonight. You hear the action right here, 7 p.m. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN.
Westwood One is your exclusive home for the 2021 NCAA tournament. It's only fitting that a season unlike any other comes to a conclusion in the most unique circumstances. From 68 teams down to 1, all in the same state. Every basket, buzzer beater, and bracket buster until a champion is crowned. Who will take home the title? Tune in to find out. All the excitement of March Madness right here.
It's the Final Four this Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 4:30.
Start the new year in a new Kia at Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River or Egg Harbor Township today. The new year is an opportunity to set goals and start fresh. And at Matt Blatt Kia, our goal is to get you out of that old car you hate. Come in today or visit us online and get the credit you deserve this new year.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We are live here on Game Night. I don't know why I just said that twice, but I just did. With that being said, joining us right now on the Boardwalk High Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin McCormick, our Sixers beat writer for 97.3 ESPN.com. As the Sixers are back in action versus the Cavs, you got Kevin's full preview of the game over at 97.3 ESPN.com. If you're watching on the video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, Kevin has a naked wall. So, Kevin, before we get into anything, we have a conversation about the wall behind you. Because usually when you come on here, you have Philly stuff on your wall. Then I'm watching you on another stream, and you have something completely else on the wall on another show that you jumped on. And now today you have nothing on the wall. What is going on here with this changing arrangement on the wall behind you?
To put it nicely, I guess I'm just a walking hot mess. But honestly, it's because when I hop on the pregame and like postgame Zooms and such, I like to just have a plain background because I don't want to just be looking like a fanboy around Doc Rivers and the Sixers players. So I take everything down and I look basic just so I don't give off the wrong impression. And I honestly just forgot to put it back up. But yeah, and then for Paul, I hopped on his podcast a couple nights ago, decided to do some rearranging. So I'm just messing with some stuff, messing around with the feng shui in my room, trying to just get the vibes good.
Well, what you need to do is you need to take your stimulus check. You need to go out and get one of those like pull-up banners like we got behind me and just stick that behind you like Paul has permanently, and then you'll just be fine, you know?
Yeah, I might have to look at it. Might have to be my next investment.
Next investment, right. So let's get to the Sixers game tonight. Obviously, this is the last game of a long road trip for them, and I think that's really where I want to start. To me, you got to give this team credit for the fact that they have gone this long without Joel Embiid. And if they win tonight, that means on the season they will be 9-8 without an MVP candidate on the floor. If nothing else, that's impressive. 9-8 without Embiid, potentially 4-2 on a road trip. I know they've struggled with the Cavs before, but I feel like the Nuggets game was the tired legs game. You know what I mean? Like the Nuggets game was the game that they were like, man, this game is a long road trip. Now they're at least closer to home in Cleveland. I was listening to CJ McCollum on his podcast. I was talking about the fact that when you go to certain towns, you have a different vibe there. Certain towns, you almost always going to lose in versus others.
Yeah, that Denver game, they definitely did look like a team that is just trying to survive a road trip. You could see it from the beginning. They're, like you said, just tired legs. Denver saw it early on that they were just gassed, and they pretty much ran them out of the gym after that opening quarter where they just couldn't miss. But like you said, this is a chance to, as crazy as it sounds, pull off a winning record on this road trip without Embiid, kind of getting rid of both of the narratives of this team of not being able to play well on the road and not being able to play well without Embiid. Doc Rivers said it about a week and a half ago that as the season has progressed, the mantra of this team has changed of how they've been able to survive without Joel Embiid compared to years past. So I still feel it's a very winnable matchup. Yeah, Cleveland's had their number this year, but I think the fact that Cleveland has had their number this year should be the kind of energy boost that they need to just come in, take care of business, get back to the winning ways, and end this long road trip on a high note.
Also, I believe there's no Jared Allen out there for the Cavs tonight. So that'll probably be an assist as well for them. Because when you think about it, listen, I know people don't think about these things, but with no Embiid, Jared Allen would be an absolute nightmare. So going into this game, not having him out there is probably a positive at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's even given Embiid trouble at times this season, as crazy as that sounds. He's been one of the few centers who can actually kind of hang around with him. And now being without Embiid, if you go small, it's just going to create a bigger roadblock for guys like Simmons and Harris as they look to attack the basket. Or if he's going at Dwight Howard, I mean, Dwight Howard's been great, but that's a tough matchup because if you saw in the Denver game, the way they've been kind of utilizing Dwight is as a lob threat, especially against Nikola Jokic, where Dwight has that clear advantage in athleticism. But Jared Allen is a young center who is great at getting vertical, so having him out of the lineup should be a nice boost.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night previewing the Sixers versus Cavs here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Tom McGinnis on the call coming up here on your home for Sixers basketball, 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, also, when you think about this team, the Sixers, this end of the road trip means they finally get to come home. And how much do you think that them knowing that home is right around the corner, how much could that maybe elevate them as well to be like, hey, this is the light at the end of the tunnel, man? Because at the end of the day, we knew the Nets were going to eventually take over the top speed, right? We knew that they were eventually going to be the number one seed just because of the makeup of that team and the way the Sixers season has gone. So at least for the Sixers, winning this game is more than just we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's we're trying to just put ourselves in a good position to have some positive vibes when we get home.
Exactly. It's all about just getting the ship back on track after you have those two rough games against the Clippers and Denver. I don't think they're really putting that much stock into Brooklyn taking a lead. They've kind of been at their heels for weeks now. I agree with what you said. It doesn't really shock me that they've taken the top seed after they look like they'd been really playing hard for it for about the past month. And it's going to shake up in these coming weeks. I feel like they're going to flip-flop that top seed for the next couple of weeks as the regular season starts to round up. But I would hope that they don't look at this last game of the road trip like how you were talking about of focusing on just getting back home. There's been a couple games this season where this team has just kind of overlooked the game for looking at what's ahead. So although it could be a nice boost of, like you said, the lights at the end of the tunnel, and you just really need to get through this game and you get to get back home to your home crowd, to your regular home routine. So hopefully they don't overlook this game because they're too busy focused on just getting back home and playing back on their home court.
Now, let's get to some of the stuff that's not specifically about the game tonight. So I know that Doc Rivers addressed the Vincent Poirier stuff, shall we call it. I know Doc used the word CRAP during the media call. But I think it's interesting because this is now the second NBA player who has described his situation with the team that traded him. JJ Redick was very vocal about his situation with New Orleans on his podcast. Now Poirier is claiming that there was communication with him. I just have trouble believing that nobody on the Sixers and nobody on the Pelicans communicates with these guys. I'm starting to wonder, Kevin, and I'm not saying this to be, dismissive. Do you really think that maybe the environment of this season, that, the COVID testing and the the bizarreness of everything, maybe everyone is just so ground to the bone that they're just like, everyone's just on edge and people are just misinterpreting everything right now?
I could see that. Just after everything these guys have gone through, like you said, they're constantly traveling. They're trying so hard to stay in health and safety protocol. That definitely has to have a mental wear and tear to you. But Doc Rivers said that him and Poirier spoke before it happened. And my big thing with that is I feel like from the beginning, there definitely had to have been a dialogue between him and the team saying, hey, you're here. You're eventually going to get packaged into a trade. I highly doubt that through the course of the season, Vincent Poirier expected to be on this roster post-deadline. So the fact that after all that, he's now trying to lash out at Doc after everything that's gone down, and not to mention, because of the fact that they've had to stay in health and safety protocols, the team has been together and really only with each other. So with all the time that they've spent together, more now than they would as opposed to in a quote-unquote normal season in terms of what's going on in the world around them, it's kind of shocking that he's coming out saying that there's been no conversation of it whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's why I'm wondering, are players just kind of in a situation where everybody's in a lose-lose here. Like, because of the way the season is going, because of the deadline being basically 6 weeks later than it usually is, because the natural progression of the season isn't there. I like to listen to player podcasts because it really gives you an insight into how they're feeling. And I've heard 3 different player podcasts. Well, one of them is a vlog, but they all are basically saying, and all 3 of them got traded. Okay. JJ Redick, CJ McCollum had a teammate traded, and then JaVale McGee got traded. If you ever watch JaVale McGee's YouTube channel, it's a little bit of a wild ride, but still, the point is that these guys are basically describing how this season has put everyone in a very awkward situation. And I just have to wonder, are these players, are they just so wound up tight that they're just lashing out? That guys are just emotionally lashing out at this point.
Part of it could be the frustration. I could definitely see that. But what's interesting to me is with all 3 of those examples, these are 3 guys that probably from the beginning of the season expected to not finish on the team that they're starting with. And when you look at JaVale McGee in Cleveland, I doubt he expected to finish the game as a Cavalier, finish the season as a Cavalier. Same with JJ Redick after they kind of down spiraled, even though they started to bounce back. And with guys like McGee and Redick, they understand that the NBA is also a business. So the fact that even after all this, I could expect a younger guy like Vincent Poirier to maybe lash out a little more, maybe because he's still fresh to the NBA and he doesn't understand the whole business aspect of it. But JJ Redick and JaVale McGee, these are 2 guys that have bounced around. It's not like these are guys who have spent their entire careers with one franchise. They've bounced around. They understand the trading and the moving around in the business side of it. So it is very intriguing to hear all these different perspectives. But I definitely could agree that there is, without a doubt, added frustration and mental wear and tear just because of what these guys have had to go through to get this season completed.
Now, the Sixers, let's get to the more positive thing. The Sixers are returning home this Saturday. The expectation is for Embiid to be back. What is your feel about Embiid coming back? Is he going to be on a minutes restriction? Is he going to play every game moving forward? These bone bruises, they're kind of unpredictable in their recovery.
I would hope they do everything in their power to be as safe as they possibly can, because if you ruin this now, you don't know how many really good swings at the plate you're going to get. So if Joel Embiid's coming back, they have to be fully sure that he's 100% ready to go. I think without a doubt, we will see games here and there where he's just not going to play because something's flaring up and you just want to keep him safe for the playoffs. And I hope part of it is not based on the fact that there's only one center in the lineup right now. This team has showed that they can fight and they're going to remain competitive whether he's in the lineup or not. And at the end of the day, it's really just getting ready for the playoffs. So I hope in no sense of this, it's rushing Embiid back because you want to get him back on the floor, that he's fully ready to go. I understand that he's a competitive guy and he wants to be out there, but you have to understand the big picture. You still have to understand the grand scheme of things, and that if he's not fully 100% healthy going into the playoffs, none of this really matters.
Yeah, there's some games coming up that you could rationalize not playing him. Like, for example, the OKC Thunder game. Come on. Do you really need Embiid out there for the Thunder game in OKC? By the way, you could literally just tell Embiid just to meet you in Dallas at that point. For example, you have a game down the road. Like, you have the back-to-backs with the Bucks, and then you play the Thunder again. So, the Hawks, the back-to-back, maybe you tell Embiid to sit for one of those games. So there are places in this schedule where you don't have to play Embiid every night. Frankly, I'm still surprised that he is expected to play this Saturday. I get it because it's the first game coming home. Fans are back in the building, blah, blah, blah. Karl Anthony Towns, we have to fight again. I don't know, but whatever the situation is, I get why it's Saturday, but I'm just concerned because I've heard from multiple doctors, all right? We've had a doctor, Dr. Jeremy Boyd from Trifecta Therapeutics, on with Mike Gill. We've heard from other doctors who are on television, like Stefania Bell on ESPN. They all describe this bone bruise as it is a pain threshold, and it's you have to be patient with the recovery kind of thing. There's no guarantee that when he comes back, he's going to be 100%. And if you have a bone bruise, there's no way he is in prime condition, right? There's no way that he is in basketball shape right now. So for me, I'd just rather be careful than not.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you want to be safe than sorry with your franchise guy, especially a guy like Joel Embiid who's already had injury history in the past. You know, you don't want to keep it kind of dancing with the devil. He's already had some scares in the beginning of the season, so if you got to bring him back, you have to be 100% sure that he's ready to go, because just as fast as all this was built, it can crumble just as quickly. I mean, we saw everyone immediately was pressing the panic button when he went down against Washington, but like you said, there's a lot of games in the season where he can sit. And although I'm more for the caution of taking the time to make sure he's ready to get back, there's also the other side of it of you don't want him to sit for too long, because this team still has to get ready for the postseason, rotation-wise, lineup-wise, and you can't really get set in that sense unless you're rolling your 5 starters out there. You know, so Dwight Howard's not running with the starting lineup, and you're running your sets with Embiid, because come playoffs, he's going to be the guy. They're going to go back to running everything through him. So part of it says, you know, you want to be safe and you don't want to rush him back too soon. But the other part of it is he does have to log some minutes before the postseason, just so this lineup is ready just from a cohesion standpoint.
Now, one more guy that we will be seeing coming back soon is a guy who hasn't even played yet for the Sixers. That is George Hill. Now, the good thing is, because of his injury, he could theoretically be closer into basketball shape, because the injuries in his hand and his thumb is not in his legs. So he could be out there running around doing stuff. It's just that he can't really be doing the catch and the shooting like you really want him to. So what do you think is a reasonable timetable for us to see George Hill?
I feel like we're going to see him sooner than later. There's been some reports that he's going to be with the team when they return home. So hopefully it's soon, because he's another guy. You got to get him inserted into the lineup. You want him out there running sets, kind of building that chemistry with the guys on the floor. So there hasn't really been anything set in stone yet, but I would say within the next week and a half, we see George Hill's debut with the Sixers.
He's Kevin McCormick. Follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973 for all your Sixers and NBA coverage. Check out his preview of the game over at 97.3 ESPN.com. And to Kevin's chagrin, the Phillies are still in extra innings, because apparently this Phillies team can't do anything simple or easily or straightforward. You know, it's the Phillies. And I know that's the real reason why Kevin took the stuff down from behind him, because with the Phillies that he just couldn't take it anymore.
Maybe I jinxed them by taking it down. Maybe that's what it was. Everything was rolling fine when the jerseys were on the wall. Oh,
so you took them down in the 6th inning?
I took them down, I guess, around 5:15. I don't remember what was going on in the game at the time, but they were up when the game started. I'll say that much.
5:15 was the Jose Alvarado experience, where he loaded the bases and still struck everyone out. So I don't know if your jerseys really had that much impact, unless Jose Alvarado is feeling the vibes of your jerseys one by one coming off the wall, which I think it's in the way too much science fiction and mysticism for my sporting mind.
Listen, I'm just going to put the jerseys back up on the wall and hope for the best.
Kevin MCC 973. Have a good one, Kevin. I'll catch you later.
See you later, Josh. Good talking to you.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to your thoughts and text messages. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We got a message from William. We will get to your message on Facebook. Also, the text board is open at 609-403-0973 for you to get on the conversation here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Yes, all of your Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, and local high school sports coverage is all there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And now we have a great new feature. You can go on the app and customize your alerts. So if you only want Eagles updates, if you only want Phillies, if you only want Sixers, if you only want Flyers, or you only want 2 of the 3 or 3 out of 4, you can customize your app alerts right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. If you haven't downloaded it, it's free. Just go to the Apple Store or Google Play, get the app, put it on your phone, customize the alerts. Don't forget, you can listen to 97.3 ESPN FM on the app as well. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, as well as the Locker Room with Billy Schweim, Flyers hockey games, as well as the Final Four this weekend, all streaming on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
It's
If you're an
Sixers
athlete or live an
basketball.
active lifestyle, aches and pains can be part of the game. That's where Trifecta Therapeutics comes into play. Trifecta Therapeutics is a premier sports rehab physical therapy center located centrally for anyone in South Jersey, right in Glassboro. Whether you're a weekend warrior or a finely tuned athlete, they treat the pros and the Joes. To find out more about Trifecta Therapeutics and how they can help you, check out trifectatherapeutics.com.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Seth on a runner, it's in the air, it's good. Seth Curry with a teardrop shot, up and
The
good.
Sixers are in Cleveland to face the Cavs tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
Matt Platt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, and online at mattplattnissan.com. Help us celebrate when you get out of that old car, truck, or SUV and into a brand new Nissan with the Matt Platt Nissan Fast Track Checkout, available online at mattplattnissan.com. Our non-touch delivery and electronic paperwork ensures your safety comes first. Plus, Matt Platt Nissan wants your trade. Bring it in today and help us celebrate the all-new Matt Platt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, or visit us online, mattplattnissan.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, our Sixers coverage and pregame thoughts are being brought to you by Sixers Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, proud sponsors of Sixers pregame coverage here on 97.3 ESPN. South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. Proud sponsors of Sixers basketball coverage here on 97.3 ESPN. The Phillies found a way to win in extra innings. Your Philadelphia Phillies have won in extra innings to start the 2021 season. Good for them. The fans are back in the building. People talked about trading Gene Segura this offseason. You know what? Good for him. Good for him and the Phillies to get the win after they almost found multiple ways to lose the game. All right, we got stuff to get to. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. Also, we have comments to get to on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. I wanted to get to William Burns commented on Facebook. And before I read the comment, I want to preface this by saying I feel like William's perspective is the perspective that I've been trying to speak to, and I've been trying to discuss intentionally about the last couple days since the trade happened. Because when the trade first happened, it was processing the trade, right? And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, it has been kind of like reevaluating the draft and the alignment, and everyone's mock drafts coming down. But I feel like as time goes on, Williams' perspective on the trade and the Eagles is really kind of the perspective that I've been trying to address and I've been trying to get in touch with. And here's the comment. William commented over there on Facebook, says, the trade the Eagles made is no good. Why would you get rid of the 6th pick when you know you need a good receiver and a good one is going to be there at 6 and not at 12? I don't get it. And again, it's the Eagles. Couple things. First of all, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I don't think that your perspective is something that is to be thrown away. Secondly, I think that you are overthinking, though, the situation, because I mentioned this in my article over at 973ESPN.com today. Because of the way the news media is, whether it's ESPN or Fox Sports or NFL Network or NBC Sports Philadelphia, whatever channel you're consuming on a daily basis, or a YouTube channel or an online stream, like CBS Sports HQ. So much of our time, we are inundated and consumed with the big names in the draft. They don't spend a lot of time going deep dive into the draft because that's not their job. Their job is to not go deep dive. Their job is to keep the casual person engaged. And so as someone like myself who's going to sit there and just go all in on some of these picks, my situation is different. I understand the Eagles don't pick a wide receiver at a certain point. It doesn't mean that you can't get a guy. It doesn't mean that you can't find certain players to draft. And I understand that for a lot of people, all they know because of the way the coverage is Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Devonta Smith. And if you believe the hype out there, Kadarius Toney because he ran a fast 40 and Terrence Marshall because he ran a fast 40. But those are not the only guys available in the draft. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and CeeDee Lamb were the top 3 wide receivers picked in last year's draft. Jeudy had a solid but not great year. Henry Ruggs was underwhelming. And CeeDee Lamb played with garbage for quarterbacks most of the year. Jalen Reagor was injured. Justin Jefferson filled the void of Stephon Diggs and all of his targets and had a great year. Brandon Ayuk, aside from a couple of injuries, had a very good year. T. Higgins had an incredible year, and that was with Joe Burrow only playing half the season. Michael Pittman Jr. became a very important part of the Colts offense, but yet all we heard leading up to the draft was Jeudy, Ruggs, Lamb. Jeudy, Ruggs, Lamb. So one of my comments is this: don't be discouraged by trading down. You can still get wide receivers in this draft. It doesn't have to be at 6 or in the top 10. I understand that Jamar Chase was supposed to be a surefire talent, and Devonta Smith is the Heisman Trophy winner. And Jalen Waddle, some people think Jalen Waddle is a better receiver potentially in the NFL than Devonta Smith. But it doesn't mean that you will automatically walk out of the draft with nobody. it doesn't mean that you can't find another player in this draft who's going to fill a need just because it's outside of those guys. Rashad Bateman is a beast. He is a leaper and a guy who attacks the ball at 6'2". If Jamar Chase is the best receiver attacking the football, Bateman is the second best, hands down. The reason why he's going in the second round is, one, because he played on a garbage football team this year, and two, he was inconsistent in college. He's got a thing where he drops the ball sometimes. Now, you can deal with drops. You can teach guys to stop dropping the ball. It's something that is a teachable thing. There are other receivers who are available in this draft. Rondale Moore was actually supposed to be the number one receiver in this draft. But Rondale Moore had a very, very strange offseason. There were rumors that the reason why he was injured and couldn't play for the first few weeks was because he was at one of those like rodeo bronco machines, and he fell off the machine and pulled a muscle. So he didn't play half the year. There were concerns about his commitment and his love for football. And he's tried to spend the last few months trying to prove all the doubts wrong, because he went out there and squatted 600 pounds. And he's not even 200 pounds weight himself. He's got a part of his personality that is very competitive. And he might be the steal of this draft because of the fact that he didn't get the hype that some of the other guys are getting. And he played on a mediocre team as well. He could play every slot. He could play on the slot. He could play the X receiver. He could play the wide receiver. We haven't seen him run certain patterns yet, but he is a weapon. And if Jalen Waddle is the best athlete, potentially, of the wide receivers, Rondale Moore might be the second best athlete. So those are two guys right there that you weren't going to pick at 6. You're not even going to pick at 12, but they're going to be second-round picks. And I think Bateman and Moore can be, to this draft class, what guys like Jefferson and T. Higgins were to last draft class, where they weren't the top 3. They weren't even the 4th guy picked, but they will be impact receivers that the Eagles could end up with. So don't be discouraged. Don't look at the trade down as just, man, we can't get Jamar Chase now. Because at the end of the day, if you believe the reports out there by guys like Albert Breer, Jamar Chase is going to the Bengals. He's not getting past 5. So if you stay to 6, you weren't getting him anyway. You're going to potentially have 3 first-round picks next year. You have now a 4th-round pick that you didn't have this coming season. You have a ton of draft capital. You have a ton of opportunities to get players. And now that you are at 12, William, you could get a cornerback. You need corners. Because guess what? You can't outscore everybody. What if you had the best quarterback in the league and the best group of wide receivers and the greatest offensive line, and you had a garbage defense? You know what the team is called? That's called the 2015 New Orleans Saints, who went 7-9 with Drew Brees and a bunch of freakish talent. Guys like Jimmy Graham was on that team. I mean, that team was nuts. But that Saints team couldn't stop you, me, and a bag of peanuts on defense. They couldn't do anything. That's why they went 7-9. You traded from 6 to 12 because you have an opportunity to still get great talent in this draft. So I understand where you're coming from, but don't be discouraged. Don't look at it as a bad move. Accept it that this is a move that's going to put you in a position to get other players. You can find wide receivers later in the draft. Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, those are 2 names that you should keep your eye on. I'll give you a couple more guys who are potentially going to be picked later in the draft because, as I mentioned, Moore and Bateman are both probably going to be second-round picks, especially with Terrence Marshall and Kadarius Toney running super fast 30 times. I'm not even fully sure if it's humanly possible that they actually ran, but apparently someone's got a quick finger on that trigger. I'll give you another name. I like what Amon-Ra St. Brown brings to the table. He played on a team this past year, didn't get a lot of opportunities because of COVID and the Pac-12 and all that mess. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is a guy who runs really good routes. He's really underrated. And I think that he is somebody that whatever team gets him is going to be very happy with him. He's probably a guy who will be around in, let's say, the 3rd round. The Eagles have 2 third-round picks right now. I think that's a guy you got to keep in mind as well. So there are some really good players available in this draft, okay? Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think those are 3 receivers that you weren't drafting a 6 overall, but they are available later in the draft. I think that's something that you can wrap your head around. 609-403-0973 is the text board. As we wrap up the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers lineup tonight. Your Sixers starters are Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, and Mike Scott. I really got to wonder if there was Jared Allen out there tonight, would Mike Scott be starting? Just saying. I think this without Jared Allen thing is a big deal. Him not playing tonight, I think that's going to allow the Sixers to get this win and finish off their road trip 4-2. Thanks again to Kevin McCormick for joining me on the show. Thanks to everybody who listened today. I'll be back on the air tomorrow for a Friday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up next, Tom McGinnis on the call, Sixers versus Cavs right here on your home for Sixers basketball in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget all your Sixers coverage over at 97.3ESPN.com.
Wake up weekday mornings from 6 to 10 with Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin on 97.3 ESPN.
So if we've been talking about chemistry issues for a while now, if we're saying that they are underperforming, CC, the way you just alluded to, I've been saying this for a while too. Why do we keep blaming the players? Like, when is there going to start to be accountability for Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge?
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. Weekday mornings at 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the